My name is Akram. I was born poor. I lived in noise. I slept with fear. My father worked with broken hands on dusty roofs for little pay. My mother cried. When rent was near, she didn't read, she didn't write, but she was strong and soft at once. She gave us food. She gave us hope. We lived in pain in small 2 rooms, with 6 inside and daily fights. At every night, loud screams began. My parents yelled. I held my breath. I sat outside. I watched the street. I dreamed of peace. I dreamed of space. My biggest dream was not a car, was not a plane, just a calm home. At school one day, I forgot books, my hands were cold, my eyes were low. The teacher slapped and said to me, "You're just like him. You'll be a waste." That word was hard. It stayed for years. It hit my soul, but not my will. I walked back home with bruised, small cheek. But in my heart, I still had light. At age 12, I found a job. I cleaned old cars with soap and sun. My shoes were torn, my shirt was thin, my hands were dry, but I still smiled. I had no phone, I had no bike, but I had lines I wrote at night. I kept a note. Inside my shirt, it said one thing: this pain will end. Some days were long, the sun was hot, the bucket heavy, my back was sore. But I came home with some small coins and gave them all to help my mom. She kissed my head, she held my hands. She said with tears, "You're still a boy." But in that moment, I felt so big. I felt so proud. I felt like man. I studied hard, with broken light. My lamp was old. My eyes were red. I watched some clips to learn new things on my friend's phone outside at night. They thought I lied. They said I cheat. They didn't trust. A poor kid's mind. But I worked hard and passed my test with high results and silent joy. I finished school, I had good grades, I had big hope, I had no plan. I sat alone, I made small lists, I dreamed of change, I dreamed of space. People would say, "You're not that smart." I didn't fight, I kept it in. I wanted peace, a simple life, a quiet room, a safe, warm bed. I worked long shifts. I cleaned old cars. I fixed old fans. I earned small tips. My hands were cut, my shoes were torn, but still I smiled and walked back home. My back would hurt, my eyes would burn, but still I read and watched free clips. I found old books, I took old notes, I learned by heart, I stayed up late. My mom would cry, she felt the weight but never stopped, giving me light. She made me tea, she brushed my hair, she kissed my head. She said, "Be proud." We had no heat, we had no net, but we had love. We had strong hearts. She sold her ring, she hid her tears, to fix the sink, to buy some food. I got a job to fix old screens, to clean laptops, to build some skills. I asked for work in small repair shops. I watched and learned. I said no word. I learned to fix. I learned to smile. I learned to wait. I learned to try. They said I'm slow, they said I'm shy, but I was deep. I watched it all. I made a page. I used my name. I shared my tips. I posted pics. First day was blank. No one replied. I cleaned the page and wrote again. Day after day, I wrote small posts like, "How to fix your broken mouse." One boy replied. He said, "Thank you." It made me cry. It gave me light. I fixed for free. I worked with care. I smiled with love. I worked with calm. One day an old, kind man came in. His phone was dead. His voice was kind. I cleaned the port. I changed the cord. I made it work. He looked amazed. He told his son, who told his wife, and then my name began to grow. People would come with hope and trust. They'd knock and say, "I heard you're good." I cleaned each tool. I used old parts. I worked in light. I worked in peace. No big machines, no fancy shop, but lots of heart and gentle hands. I charged small fees. I gave fair work. I took no lies. I took no bribes. I found a room behind a shop. It had one door. It had one bed. I cleaned the walls. I fixed the bulb. I felt so rich. I felt so free. I cooked some rice. I made some tea. I sat and stared at my new life. It was so small, but it was mine, and that alone gave me deep pride. I took a book. I wrote a line. I hung it there above my head. It said, "Be kind, and stay so real. The world is loud, but peace is deep." I slept alone. I heard no screams, no angry fights, just quiet breath. I woke up slow. I stretched my arms. I looked around. I smiled again. I used old chairs. I made new shelves. I found lost wood and turned it clean. My room grew warm. My tools felt new. My hands grew sure. My steps grew light. People came more. They stayed and talked. They told me things. They felt at ease. One woman cried. She said, "Thank you." Her laptop worked. Her heart felt safe. I didn't shout. I didn't post, "Look at me now," or "See my fight." I just kept on. I kept it soft. I kept it true. I kept it slow. The climb was long. It had no fame, but it was mine, and I was whole. I didn't run to chase the stars. I stayed on ground. I built my light. I woke each day with quiet joy. I cleaned my floor. I made my tea. I opened shop with calm and hope. I checked my tools. I played soft songs. I smiled at kids. I helped the old. I fixed with care. I gave them peace. Each little job gave me new pride. I saw their eyes. I heard their thanks. One man came back. He brought his son. He told him this: "He works with love." The boy just stared, then gave a grin. He said, "You smile like you're at home." I laughed a bit. I said, "I am." And in my heart I felt so warm. More people came, not just for help, but for a chat or some advice. One man was lost. His shop had failed. He came to me to fix a phone. But as we talked, he shared his pain. I said few words. He wiped his tears. He left in peace. He looked less sad. And then he smiled before he went. I fixed the screen. I fixed his hope. And I just sat and breathed in slow. The street was loud, the world was fast, but in my shop, the time was kind. Some kids would knock, just out of fun, and I would wave and hand them mints. They called me bro. They said, he's chill. And that alone made me feel big. No one knew much about my past, but all could see the peace I grew. One quiet night I found a box. Inside it held some old small things. A note from Mom, some coins she saved, a photo torn, and one old spoon. I held it close. I said her name. I felt her love. I closed my eyes. She once had said, "Be soft, be real," and now I knew. I made it true. I got a call from one big place. They saw my page. They liked my tone. They said, "Come work. Your hands are smart. We need your heart. We see your light." But I said no. I felt it deep. My shop was home. My soul was here. I had no fame, no shiny suit, but I had roots, and they were strong. I bought a desk. I bought a lamp. I wrote some thoughts. I made a plan. To teach for free, on weekends slow, to kids like me who have no means. I found a hall with peeling walls, but kids still came and took their seats. I showed them tips, I gave them notes, I made it fun, I kept it real. One boy stayed late, he fixed a fan, he cleaned the blade, he smiled with pride. He said, "Someday I'll be like you." I held his hand and said, "Be more." The light was low, the room was hot, but joy was big, and hearts were full. They came with hope. They left with skills. They felt some peace. They felt some worth. I still fixed things from door to night, but now I knew my life had weight. Each tool I held stories deep. Each sound of click felt like a win. I once felt small, like just a name, but now I shined in my own way. I didn't shout, I didn't run, I simply built, one day by day. A man once asked, "What drives you still?" I said with calm, "A quiet goal. To sleep in peace, to feel no fear, to help someone, then sleep again." He looked at me, then shook my hand, and walked away with something new. That was enough. No stage, no clap, just one small seed passed on with care. Some mornings came, with soft light near. I opened slow, I brewed my tea. The shop was warm, the tools were still. I sat alone, I watched the sun. A small bird sang above my door. I smiled a bit and closed my eyes. Peace was a gift I never had, but now I knew it lived with me. One day a girl with tears and fear came in and asked to fix her phone. It had her notes, her saved old chats, her school exams, her dreams inside. I said, "Don't worry." I took my time. I worked with care and kept her calm. She watched in awe. She dried her face, and when it lit, she almost cried. She said, "Thank you." She hugged her bag, then turned to go, and smiled at me. I sat back down, I wiped my brow, I thought of Mom, and closed my eyes. People came in, with more than needs. They came with fears and hope as well. And when they left, they looked more whole, not just because their screens were fine. A storm once hit, the roof had leaks, my tools got wet, my bench broke down. I felt so lost. I sat all night. I watched the rain and stayed so still. I told myself this too will pass, and lit one light and held my cup. Next day I swept, I dried each wire, I fixed each cord with hands and heart. My neighbor came with food and tape. She said, "We help. We've seen your ways." I did not cry, but I felt deep, the love she gave, the care she brought. A boy came too. He brought old parts. He said, "You taught and helped us grow." I said, "Let's fix," and we began. The shop was loud with laugh and light. I wrote new signs, I shared my work, I filmed some clips, I shared them all. A man from far wrote me online. He said, "You teach with soul and fire." He sent me tools. He sent me books. I read them slow. I learned some more. At night I drew some circuit maps and dreamed of ways to help more kids. Each Sunday came, the hall was full. The kids sat close, with eyes so wide. I drew on boards. I asked small tasks. They took their turns. They tried. They smiled. They made mistakes, then fixed again. I saw their pride. I felt it grow. One girl stood up. She showed her work. The class all clapped. She looked so proud. I gave her box of tools and tape. I said, "It's yours. Go teach your friends." She held it tight. She looked so shy. She walked back slow, but held it firm. The kids all laughed. They stayed past noon. I stayed with them and wiped my board. I walked back home with tired feet, but light inside like never before. One night I wrote. My thoughts so slow, I wrote to Mom. Though she was gone, I told her this. I made a place with peace and care, with no loud fights. I kept your voice inside my heart, and now I teach and help the weak. I have no car, no gold or chain, but I have light, and it is real. I slept that night without a dream, just calm and still, like silent stars. The shop was dark, the world was fast, but I was firm, like solid stone. Next week, a man with suit and tie came in and said, "I've heard of you. You help young minds. You build with love. We want to fund your weekend school." I looked at him. I felt unsure. I said, "That's kind, but we go slow." He said, "Of course we'll take your pace, but dreams grow strong when hands are joined." I gave a nod. He left a card. I placed it safe behind my fan. I sat and thought, not of big things, but of small steps and warm, strong roots. The rain came back. I fixed the roof. I painted walls. I changed old bulbs. I cleaned my tools. I cleaned the floor. I hung new signs. I felt so light. A boy walked in with books and tape. He said, "I'm back. I want to learn." I gave a grin. I said, "Let's start." And then we built a small bright lamp. People passed by. They saw the light. Some came inside. Some stood and watched. One man once said, "Your shop feels safe," and that alone made all worth it. No golden gate, no news or prize, but every face was pure and calm. I didn't need loud cheers or shows. I had small wins in hands and hearts. A man came back. He brought his son, he said. He wants to be like you. The boy just smiled, he shook my hand, and I could feel the hope he held. I said, "Work hard, stay kind and true, and build with care, no matter what." The boy just nodded, the dad just smiled, and both walked out with lighter steps. I woke at 6, I washed my face, I made some tea, I sat in peace. The light was soft, the room was warm, I looked outside, the sky was clear. No loud sounds came, no screams or pain, just quiet air and early birds. I took my book, I marked one line, I wrote one thought, then closed my eyes. I thought of days, with no good sleep, with broken doors and empty hands. I thought of Mom and how she worked, how she would sing to hide her tears. I thought of school, with shame and fear, with cold old shoes and torn old books. But all of that became my fire. It made me strong. It shaped my path. One evening came, a knock was soft, a boy stood still, he held a box. He said, "It's time. I fix my mind. I learn to grow. I build like you." I gave a nod. I pulled a chair. I showed him wires. I gave him tape. His hands were small, but eyes were sharp. He tried again and smiled with pride. More kids came, too. They brought their friends. They took old tools. They watched the light. They sat on mats. They laughed a lot. They asked me things. I answered slow. We built small things from broken parts. We gave them life. We made them shine. Some fixed fans and some fixed lamps. One girl once built a radio box. She held it up, she said out loud, "I did this here, I did it right." The room was still, then claps were loud, and all of us just felt the joy. She wrote her name on that same wall where I once wrote, "Be proud and kind." The shop was small but full of hope. It smelled of wires and hands with dreams. A man once came in suit and tie. He looked around and saw the kids. He said, "This place is more than shop. It's school of heart. It's light for minds." He asked my name. I said it soft. He smiled and said, "You changed some lives." I thanked him slow. He left a card. I did not call. I kept it safe. My phone would ring some nights and days with boys and girls from far and near. They saw my clips. They shared my posts. They said, "You help, you fix with soul." One girl wrote this, "I watched your hands, and now I build, with no more fear." I read her words. I wiped my eyes. I wrote her back, "You made my day." I had no car, no big front gate, no shiny floor, no gold or prize. But I had peace and time to breathe. I had my tea, my fan, my chair. I had one bed with clean, soft sheet, one wall of books, one plant, one light. That little room was all I dreamed, and every inch I made with care. I made a map to teach more kids. I shared free notes. I filmed new steps. I made it clear. I spoke real slow. I used old tools and kind, soft words. And more came in with hands and dreams. They sat on mats and learned from scratch. One day a boy fixed a dead phone. He jumped with joy and kissed his hand. A grandma came with broken light. She said, "I heard. You fix with heart." I fixed it slow. I cleaned the wires. I gave it back. She kissed my head. She said, "You shine like boys should do. You make me proud. You fix with soul." I gave her tea. She gave me bread. She left with peace. I stayed and smiled. At night I wrote one quiet page. I wrote, "Be kind, be still, be firm. Help one small life, then help one more, and that will grow to build a world. Do not chase gold, chase peace instead. Do not chase noise, just build your calm." I closed the book. I made my tea. I washed my hands and slept in peace. One day I sat with boy and girl. They showed me apps they made for school. I saw their eyes, so full of light. I saw their hands, with dreams and plans. I said, "You lead. I stand behind. I walk with you, but you now lead." They nodded slow. They smiled wide. They hugged me strong and left with hope. The shop stayed small, but hearts were big. The door stayed open. The lights stayed on. I wrote new signs with words so true. This is your space, your tools, your time. Each week I met a face so new, with one big dream and little skill. And every time they left with more, not just a fix, but some belief. And now I sit with hands at rest. I sip my tea. I close my eyes. I think of life, not full of things, but full of steps that made me grow. I think of Mom, her voice, her hands, her tiny room, her brave big heart. And if she sees what I have done, I think she'd say, "You made me proud."